Welcome to Rise and Shine. I am Vuyanzi. Did you know that the World Health Organization estimated that over 116 million people across the African region are said to have had mental health conditions? And that was pre-pandemic. Can you imagine what it could be now? So today we're talking about breaking the silence on mental health because it matters. And I have two amazing guests who are going to help me to unpack that. But first, we want to make sure you join in the conversation across all social medias. Make sure you comment and tell us what you think about the topic. Put your input because we want to hear from you. Also, make sure you reach out to us on our SMS line at 20316. So let's introduce our guests and get started on this great conversation. So first I have Marian. Marian, before we get started, I know that one of the things that struck me about you is in our local organization that you run the mental health initiative. I see you putting out webinars and different types of events so that people have awareness as it pertains to mental health. Mm-hmm. Now, that's why it struck me that you should be sitting here today as a professional on this couch. Mm-hmm. Help me with this, though. Tell the audience, why should they be listening to you speak about this today?
Okay, thank you so much, Vuyanzi. Now, number one, mental health is a topic that a lot of people shy away from. Mm-hmm. And yet, it's one of those things that is eating us as a community and as family members. So I am a family therapist and an EMDR trauma therapist.
You have to help us with EMDR.
EMDR means eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. It's an approach that is used that helps clients to address the trauma that they've gone through in their lives. So it's one approach of how to address mental health, trauma during sessions in mental health. Yeah. And so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, we need to create awareness across the board in Africa and beyond about mental health.
Well, thank you. I hope that people are hearing already and their ears are perked up to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to build upon this conversation. Mm-hmm. Our next guest, so happy to have you here. G, we'll call you G, but your full name is Gumaiwa. Gumaiwa.
Yes.
Please, that's what it is. And this is Gumaiwa, also known as G, and we are so happy that you are here joining us. Now, G, I read a couple of your blogs, but the first one I read really struck me. And that was because you talked about yourself as a Christian and the struggle that you were having in being a Christian, and also still having a challenge with your mental health. I say that struck me to my heart in a beautiful way because over the years, I have seen or heard of Christians struggling with their mental health, but no one really wanted to talk about it. Although you were there, not just talking about it, but writing about it and putting it in print. Now that's what struck me, and that's why, for me, why you're well qualified to be sitting on this couch today. Please, I want you in your own words, tell the audience today why they should be listening to what it is that you'll have to say during our conversation.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. As you've heard, my name is Gumaiwa Movali. Among the many things I do, I am a mental health champion with a lived experience of bipolar disorder. And the blog Vuyanzi you just mentioned is called Strokes and Prose, which is it's more like a faith-based platform that focuses on using the arts to create mental health awareness, provides psychosocial support to the youth living with mental illness, and mentor young and upcoming artists. So I do the awareness through the blog in the platform, where I share my personal journey with bipolar, my real life story with real life people, the goodness and the goodness of God in that journey, and also the impact these people have had in my journey with bipolar. And I do also the awareness creation through invitations through to webinars, interviews, both TV and radio, podcast interviews as well. So that's what I do. And it's something that is very close to my heart because it's something that I live and experience each and every day. Yeah.
Wow. So thank you so much. Let us get this conversation started. I want to really focus on, I want to think and talk about the genesis of when we're talking about all of this so we can lay a firm foundation. We say mental health, we say mental wellness, we say mental illness, but what does this all mean? So can we get some definitions? They don't have to sound like they come straight out of the dictionary, but can we lay a foundation so as we start this conversation, people really know what we're talking about? So Marian, I'll start off with you, and also G, I'll ask you to build upon what she starts with.
Okay. Now, mental health is defined in very many ways. Number one, mental health is invisible, in that we have physical health, but we also have mental health, we have social health. All these are part of who we are, But mental health is the capacity, this is my own definition, it's the capacity to be able to cope with whatever life throws at you, And so when things happen like trauma or challenges that people encounter, especially as children, then they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. And so they start making ways or surviving whatever they've gone through in their own way. And sometimes it can be very hurtful, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way we are wired, that I want to find a solution to my problem. So if somebody goes through trauma, they may become very bitter. They may become angry, they may become isolated, and things like that. But then that is because they don't know what to do. So mental wellness is being able to know that, hey, whatever I'm going through is normal, and I can ask for help, and there is professional help out there. So mental illness is usually a result of lack of support. Okay. Professional support or even family support.
So right now what I'm hearing as you're continuing on with but mental wellness it's the invisible. However, it's someone realizing that they need the support and then they're seeking it. Right. And then what I'm hearing you say is the illness, it's almost like something that's been untreated. Mm-hmm. So now it kind of is the illness. So it's there, but not being treated. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It develops into, into mental illness now, what we have as the mental health disorders. But it started as a result of something, there is the genetic bit of science shows that if the pattern of mental illness is there in the family, for example, suicide, there's likelihood that it will continue if it is not treated, or if people don't understand what is the reason that people are dying by suicide in our family. For example, what are the issues that are going on in that family, because people don't just wake up and decide to die by suicide. They've gone through something. So we need to pay attention to our experiences, childhood experiences, especially the environment and what's happening around us, to avoid getting mentally ill, Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting an understanding here. G, I'm going to turn to you because you of course are a person who's gone through your own challenges. However, you're a champion of this as well. So that means there's a bit of understanding that you have. What do you understand about mental wellness, mental health, and so forth?
Actually, I agree with Dr. Ari here. Mental health is actually a positive concept, and it's only that people tend to use mental health and mental illness interchangeably, but they are not one and the same thing. Mental health, as she said, is something is when you're able to thrive in society. Basically, you're able to thrive in all the areas of your life. Mental illness is now when your mental health is compromised. So you can have good mental health and you can have bad mental health. So when you're thriving, it's good. When you're not, then you're probably mentally ill. Mm-hmm. So that's just pretty much the basis of it. Yeah.
So now we have a foundation and understanding. G, I want to turn to you because I want to hear a little bit about your story. When was the genesis of this for you that you said, something's a little bit different?
For me, it was at the onset of puberty. Yes. So I was in class 7, so just started feeling different. And it's not the all of a sudden the deep voice kind of different, the broad shoulders kind of different, or the interest in the opposite sex kind of different. It was different to the extremes. So one moment have this heightened level of energy. I'm doing all these things in school, and I was in boarding school. Another moment, I'm totally in a low. I'm crying. I'm very, very emotional and very expressive. So the person who brought to the attention that there might be something up is used to call them our boarding master. We had an incident that I was very, very emotional about. And it was like it was to the extreme. We've seen kids his age being emotional, but that was just too extreme for a young man like him. But then it was never addressed at the time because it was perceived, I'm just an adolescent, so experiencing, a wide range of emotions. Then I went to high school. I still experienced the same in high school, but when I was in Form 3, it was really, really bad. I could go to sleep at around 11 p.m. By 2 a.m. I'm awake. In fact, I used to have incidences where I used to be sent back to the dormitory to get some sleep by the security guards because I'll be up. I'm going to class, or I'm going to the other dormitories, to other hostels to get others to wake up so that we can go to have the morning preps. So I used to have these a lot. I remember particularly in my second year of Form 3, I really participated in a lot of activities. I was in the choir. I remember joining rugby. At some point, I was playing hockey. So I was doing a lot. And at some point, I was in and out of school a lot since I was in Form 1. But then, again, it was never addressed. I think it was in Form 3, Form 2, Form 3 that I really, really had a really bad experience.
So stop right there before you tell us about your bad experience, because you're saying over a few years,
it took a while.
There's things happening.
Yeah.
And it sounded like at first the boarding master, he identified something, but nothing really got done.
Yeah.
How were you coping without help for all those years?
Yeah, but you see, it wasn't that I'm in a low I'm in a very long period. So it was seasons. It was seasons. So it's just one incident, and he pointed out, hey, there's something there. But after a while, I'm okay. So like, maybe it wasn't that serious. So, and again, as I've said, I was going through puberty. So it was perceived that he's just going through puberty. It's a phase, and it shall come to pass. That is why it wasn't addressed early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're at the bad experience, please.
Yeah, I had a bad experience, and because I think I was going through a high for quite a while. And when you're going through a high, at some point you have to come down, and I had to be hospitalized, and the doctor then suggested that I have a psychiatric interview. And at that time, mental illness and those are things that were spoken in whispers. So these are things you couldn't speak out in public and say, hey, my son is going through this or this. I remember my dad at the time saying, no son of mine is mad, because at the time it was perceived anyone who sought out any psychiatric services was, mad. That was what it was called. You are mad. So I never saw a psychiatrist until I had to change schools. So I came to Nairobi because the school advised that I was in and out of school a lot. And when I was in boarding school, every time I go back to school, I'm playing catch up. So the school advised that I had to come to Nairobi, closer to my parents and, closer to my doctor. And they suggested that I don't go to a boarding school, I go to a day school. So I was admitted at St. Mary's, which is in the same vicinity as St. Mary's Hospital. And there was an art club, and I was at some point I became the, organizing secretary of the art club. And being very introverted, I spent a lot of time in the library, in the art corner, just doing my sketches, doing my illustrations, writing my poetry. But then I became very close to one of the directors of the art club, who was also a psychologist. So most of the time, either I was in the library during the games time, or I was in his office, and I'll pick his brain on various things, psychology, philosophy, a lot of things. So there's a time I was tasked with organizing an exhibition for a group of student nurses who used to come every year from Michigan, California. So I did this while on a high. So when it was done, I started experiencing withdrawal. And when they left, I was corresponding with one of their professors. And she told me, it's unique what you're going through. Why don't you talk to Daktari and see what he says? And just at an instant, because it's someone I'd interacted with from close to a year, he told me you probably have manic depression, which later is what I learned is now termed as referred to as bipolar disorder.
So, wow. You're taking us through this story, and I hope that people are listening and watching, because it's amazing that you even were able to do, so well for so long without, you were somehow still coping, even with puberty and everything that was happening. But there's something that you said. You said your dad said, and no shade against your dad, there's no son of mine that's mad. And that what makes me come back to you, Marion, because, you're talking to people who've had some trauma, some experience. And I'm just curious that when it comes to the point where G just told us about, where people are starting to see that there's some support needed, what have you seen that are barriers to people getting support? Because that could have been a complete barrier. No son of mine is mad. We'll never discuss this again. We'll never. Yeah. That happens. But what are some of the examples you've seen of things like that?
Okay. One of the barriers is not knowing that mental illness is usually diagnosed from age 14. During adolescence is when now the mental health issues come up, because that is when the adolescents become cognitive of what's been happening. That's just the brain development part of it. And they become cognitive of what's been happening in their lives. And then they start, now feeling a certain way. The other barrier is parents or those who are working with the young people being in denial. And there's no parent who wants their child to be mentally ill. And then given our cultures where there's been this belief that people have been bewitched, so then it becomes something to hide, under the table, and don't mention this. And it can be very painful for parents to actually want to face the truth that my son has got issues. And that is why creating awareness is so important, so that people understand what is mental health, what is mental illness, how does it show up, and where can we get help. It's good that he got to do a psychiatrist evaluation, and that's why he can be here today talking about it, because if he didn't have that support, then where would he be, today? Yeah, so those are some of the barriers. Lack of awareness.
Well, let's get into a kind of provocative barrier here. And one of the things I think about is the verse in the Bible where Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Yet, people in church, there is a barrier to having abundant life because there is silence around the mental health. Now, you talked about cultural things. However, let's go even into the church, and I'm not asking you both to become theologians right now, but just kind of looking and thinking about how the church perceives or how it has perceived mental health. What are some of the challenges you've seen around that? G, I'm going to go over to you because your blog, the first one that I read, was very poignant, and it's kind of giving some context to why you were thinking of where you were the way you were thinking about it. How has church formulated your view? How did it at that time?
At the time, it wasn't easy going through that while in church. I was baptized very early. I was actually till class 7. Yes, I was in class 7 and still new in the faith, and so being very young, energetic, you're also expected to be, very active. So there are moments when, I'll be very active in church for a certain period of time. Then at some point I'll withdraw. People will be like questioning, what's happening, what's wrong. Then there are times I used to experience even panic attacks in church, and they were really bad. Sometimes I had to, to be taken outside so that I did not disrupt, the service. Okay. But I think one of the things that I used to hear a lot is, I need to refuse that spirit. You need to, you need to refuse that spirit.
So let me just make sure we're all on the same page here. Just resist the devil and he will flee.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to refuse that spirit. Spend some more time in prayer and fasting. As if I wasn't praying enough, as if I wasn't fasting, and it felt like I was going through these alone. And at some point, I left church for a whole year because I needed to figure out this thing. Because one moment you're in church saying, whatever I was going through, I've been healed, I feel like I'm okay now. Then a few months down the line, you're again going through the same cycle and you're like, what's this? What's the point of this? And at the time, I also didn't understand the concept of, of healing and suffering, that God can choose to heal you or not to heal you. That is his will. And then...
Wait, stay right there a second, because I really want you to bring out that point. You said that God can choose to heal you or to not heal you.
Yeah.
Help us out with that, because aren't we just supposed to pray for healing and get it in Jesus' name?
Yeah, but you see, we are not entirely promised a life of, of free of pain and suffering. Even the grace in the Bible went through pain and suffering, but God saw them through the entire storm. And that's the understanding that I think many people don't have, that while I'm going through this, yes, I'm praying for healing, but then what happens if I'm not healed? What happens if I'm not healed? And I remember even if you look at that blog post, the specific one you read, there's a point I mentioned a prayer that I made very early on, at a point where I actually had to come to acceptance that, okay, this is what I have. So what next? Do
you kind of remember what you wrote of that prayer?
Yes,
could you say that prayer?
I remember in the prayer I say that, God, I since you're all knowing, I believe that you knew way beforehand, and you knew me before I was conceived in my mother's womb. I'm aware that you might have known that I would be diagnosed with probably a lifelong condition at some point. And I pray this now, while I desire that you take away this pain from me, I will no longer pray for healing. Only take this away when you deem it fit to take it away. But between now and then, do give me the grace to walk this journey, because it's a very difficult journey.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, it has been close to 15 years now, actually almost 20. And I'll tell you that I've not been healed. The other day we were talking and I was telling you that right now I'm battling depression. Actually, it's the long bout of depression I've had since I was diagnosed. And I've not been healed, but I've seen the grace of God throughout these many years. I see one of the best psychiatrists in the country. I have a very good supporting system, my family, my faith community right now. And, I'm able to thrive in everything that I do.
Oh, wow. I'm going to stop you right there. Woo! I might need some tissues. We have to take a break. I hope you are picking something up, those of you who are watching and listening, because there are some gems and beautifulness all around here. Make sure you're joining the conversation. If you haven't started, what are you waiting for? This is Rise and Shine. I'll see you on the other side of the break.
We are living in a lost and broken world, constantly bombarded by messages of hate and atrocities. But with God, we can overcome. Find hope and restoration on the go through life-changing shows on the Family Media app.
And then you will lose yourself and gain the world. And Jesus said, what good is it?
Get to stream Family TV and Family Radio 316 straight from your phone. Catch up on a show you missed or create video streaming playlists by saving and watching videos from our huge variety of shows at your own convenience. Download the Family Media app, available for all Android and iOS users on the Google Play Store and Apple Store, respectively. Family Media, keeping Jesus on the airwaves.
Welcome back, everyone, to Rise and Shine. I am Vuyanzi. Again, we are talking about breaking the silence. Mental health matters. I have my two guests with me here today. I have Marian, the therapist, and G, the mental health champion, advocate champion, and creator. hopefully you'll get a chance to talk about all those things too. So we are unpacking this conversation, we left off about the church and the perception around mental health and how that looks. I did not give Marion a chance to respond to that, and now we come to you.
Okay. My thoughts about the church is this. There is a lot of prosperity gospel going out there. And it's like church people are not humans, so to speak. They're not supposed to experience depression and bipolar and all that, But the truth is we are human beings. The Bible says we are in the world, but not of the world, And so long as we are in the world, the Bible says we shall have many troubles. Yes. And those troubles happen in our families, in our environments and all that. But that is not being preached in church, and that needs to be preached. Pastors and preachers don't need to shy away from calling a spade a spade. The church people are also mentally sick. They're also struggling with a lot of things, finances, floods. They are also caught up in things like floods. They are also caught up in the riots and everything, So we need to talk about this and how Jesus is the answer, and how he helped, such people. There were people that were struggling even during the time of Jesus, and he stopped and addressed their issue and helped them. But in church, we are also holy and we don't go through anything. And if we do, it is demonic. It is demonic. But really, God is the one who gave us a mind, to think and feelings. So we get hurt, and if we don't know what to do, then our behavior then gets affected. But if the church could collaborate with mental health professionals, they would really be assisted. And I appreciate that some churches even have counseling professionals and they're embracing this thing. But we all need to do it, yeah. Yeah.
G, did you want to add on to something?
Yeah, for me, it's actually, once I think I came into acceptance, which is something I think very, very important among the in the faith community. Once you gain understanding, because it took also took a lot for me on my part to get to that place where I'm saying, okay, this is what I have, and I trust God to see me through this journey. Once I came to that understanding and I had that acceptance, it was easy for me even to advocate for myself. And even right now, part of my greatest support system comes from actually the church.
Part of your greatest
support system is the church. Yeah. Because I did mention that I left church for a year. So I left and I went to a different church where nobody knew me. Nobody knew me completely. So it was just me coming to church, me and God, then I leave. But then slowly, I sort of got integrated into the community. And I remember at some point I desired for, someone to walk with me, an older man or a man of faith, someone who's gone ahead of me in the faith. And I remember when I finished college, it was just a Friday prayer service, and I met with this gentleman, a pastor, and I actually was asking him to share me with the playlist because he's the one leading worship, and he said, it's not a playlist, just some of the oldies. And we had a conversation, and he told me, tell me about your story, because of something I'd mentioned. I told him, I have a reputation of talking a lot. Are you ready to listen? Because if you are not ready to listen, there's no point in me sharing this. And he said, yeah. And we spoke for like 2-3 hours.
Wow. Yes,
it was on a Friday. The following week we met on a Tuesday, and I told him, I wanted him to mentor me and work with me. And I told him something very early on. Mm-hmm. I've been through a lot. Don't talk to me about healing. Mm-hmm. I've been through a lot in terms of that. Don't talk to me about this and this. I believe this is a burden that I've been called to carry.
Wow.
Yes. And this is what he told me. Okay, I will not talk to you about all that, but if it is a burden that you called to carry, I'll see to it that you carry it and carry it gladly.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, you're bringing up so many things that I want to go into. So the first thing I'm hearing G say is that you became the biggest advocate for yourself, and it reminds me of a previous discussion you and I had, Marion, where you said something like mental health is a person's responsibility. Can you kind of say that and what exactly that means?
Now, when one becomes aware that they have a mental health issue, it is their responsibility to seek help. Because sometimes family wants to help, or even the church, or if somebody notices. But some people don't want the help. They are like, I am well. They deny it. They're in denial. I am okay. I don't need help, or I'll sort this out, by myself. Where somebody is not aware that they have mental health issues, it's important if they get into, say, the webinars or a discussion like this, so that they begin to understand that, as much as I go for my physical health every year, I go to for tests and all that, I also need a mental health check. How am I doing? Find out how one is doing, how they are feeling. Like, always stop and pause, like even once every day, and just ask yourself, how am I feeling today? Why am I feeling this way? And monitor it. If it goes on for so long, I need help. Why have I been feeling this way for over a month? What's going on with me? And then seek that help. Because usually somebody who just becomes aware that, hey, something is wrong, they don't know the details of what could have brought them to that place. So seeking help is very, very important. So yes, at the end of the day, when it comes to children, parents are responsible for seeking help for them, okay? But when somebody is an adult, it's their responsibility to seek help. Let me give you an example. Sometimes people get into alcoholism a lot and into drugs and things like that. But they didn't just get into alcoholism. There is an underlying reason, and usually it's a mental health issue. But you see, when they are drunk, they can talk about things in the club, yeah? But then when they sober up, they are okay. They are not going to seek help from professionals and things like that. But now, the thing is, they may not be aware that taking alcohol and all that is also affecting now their physical health and many other things, including their finances, and their relationships. So the mental health aspect is becoming worse, not better, by taking alcoholism. But if you ask somebody who is really into alcohol, they will feel like you're stepping into their space, you have no business there, and they're like, I'm okay with it. But truly, introspection takes place internally. And so it's everyone's responsibility to seek help. And if they won't, there's nothing anybody, even the professionals, there's nothing they can do about it. Because as professionals, we cannot, for example, force an adult to come for therapy. And even if they come against their wish, it may not work. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So much is running through my mind right now, because when I hear that mental health is your responsibility, mental health is your responsibility. And I go back to hearing both of you say, if you don't deal with it, it's going to become an illness. And now, how does society have to deal with your illness that now you didn't take care of when you saw the signs? What do people need to shift in their mindset to break through the barriers? Because really the barriers are in our minds. They're not real. Maybe I shouldn't say they're not real, but they feel very real. But what mindset shift do people need to have to start seeking help, or at least start asking themselves the question, do I need support? G, I'm curious about yours, what you come up with.
I just to add on what she said, it actually is your responsibility. As you've heard, I said, for me, the first early signs and symptoms were I was in class 7. It took 5 years for me to speak up and say, there's something I'm going through, and I had to talk to a doctor. And he summoned my parents. Okay? It took 5 years for my dad to come around. He finally did come around. And, one of the things he told me, because even after I started taking medication, I wasn't very, very disciplined in taking my medication. And there's something he told me, I can only do so much.
Wow.
I can make sure you've gotten your medication. I can make sure you have a roof over your head. I can make sure you have food, you have clothes. I can make sure that your sessions are paid for, that you get to see your doctor when you're supposed to. But anything outside that, it's beyond my control. It's you. I do not know what you're experiencing through. It's you who knows how you feel. It's you who knows how you're going through a low. It's who knows when you're going through a high. So a very big part of coping well and all this, it's actually from the person experiencing it. And that's why they are a support system. That means for them to become a support, there's something that you're supposed to be doing on your own. So they're just supporting you where you're falling short. Okay.
So, but really quickly though about that, because you just told us even a transformation. It's like your dad had the Saul to Paul experience, right? This transformation, and he went through that, and that's so powerful. Even from the support standpoint, what do you think changed that helped him to say this to you?
Oh, I had to seek understanding of what I was going through, because how can I advocate for myself if I don't know what I'm going through? And what had happened is I had to take a break from school for close to 6 months, okay? Because I had gone off my medication completely and nobody knew, okay? So I've secretly gone off my medication. I'm spiraling into a high. At the time, I was going to 2 schools. I've been officially, I'm an official student of 1 school, but I'm also going to another one every night. So nobody knows what I'm going through. So I'm going through a high. Then now I'm unable to cope with school. I'm unable to cope with a lot of things. And the school says, hey, this guy cannot cope with the rigors of the course he's taking. He needs to take a break. My dad comes, he's someone, and he's told, your son needs to take a break. And I was furious. And I told him, you need to have my back. And he told me supporting that you take a break is me having your back. But at the time, it wasn't clear. Okay? And during that break, what did I do? Because it was 6 months. 2 of those months, I was taking my medication, sleeping and eating and resting. After I started recovering slowly by slowly, I did everything that I could. That means reading everything about bipolar, coping mechanisms, and other mental health disorders, and also learned to devise my own coping mechanism, because I knew in 6 months I'm going back to school. But in 2 years, I'll be out of school. I'll be doing life. So I had to know how to cope in and out of school. So for me to tell my dad, hey, Chief, I'm going through a low. And he asked me, what does that look like? So because I've taken time to gain knowledge regarding what I'm going through, I'm able to communicate that to him. So over time, him even taking note that, hey, this guy is going through this, but he's actually taken time to understand what he's going through. And I can communicate it clearly. That is what brought about that transformation.
Wow.
And to answer your question about the, what kind of things people need to go.
Mindset shift.
Yes, what's the mindshift people need to go through? First is to understand that being diagnosed with a mental illness it's not a life sentence.
Wow.
It's not a life sentence. It's not like you walk around with a plaque on your head or your forehead saying, I have bipolar, I have schizophrenia, I have anxiety disorder. You wouldn't know I have bipolar unless I tell you.
Right.
Or unless you read my blog. You wouldn't know the heaviness of that burden unless you see that. So coming to an acceptance that it's not a life sentence. And you can still thrive.
Wow.
I want to add something to that. I like the word you're using, mindset.
Yes.
Yes. Now, what can help? Number one is to change our fixed mindset, which is very narrow, fixed mindset, and have a growth mindset. We must be open to looking at different perspectives of ourselves. So that means it's important for each of us to realize that there is what we call holistic care, holistic care of my perceptions, number one. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? What decision should I make? How will that affect me? How is everybody who is around me affecting me, So think of the physical self. Am I taking care of myself? Think of the emotional self. How are my emotions? And what do I do? Do I make emotional decisions? Or do I pause and think about why I'm thinking that and therefore what I should do? Because sometimes emotional decisions lead to worse mental health. For example, an angry person starts beating everybody around the place. Now they are affecting even the person they are beating. And yet, whatever they are angry about may have nothing to do with the person that they are beating. So the emotional self, then the social self. There is a social self, and then there is a mind, that brain, what you think. We need to take care of that as well and challenge our thinking. We don't just believe everything we hear, and we need to challenge our thinking, go deeper, And then there is the spiritual self. And the spiritual self is some aspect that some people just ignore. But research shows that Christians have better mental health.
Wow.
There is already a research out there that says that, because there is the tendency to support, and he's a testimony
Yes.
to that, that he gets support from the church, If it can be support from every church, that would be also very good. Right now, what's coming to my mind is the issue of Shakahola. What was that about? People were just getting drawn in, and they suffered and they died. Why? Because of not challenging their thinking.
The issue of, and I want you to, just for people who don't know, just a quick understanding of who you just said and what you were just talking about.
Okay, that was an incident that happened in our country, I think 2 years ago.
And our country, meaning we're sitting and recording in Kenya.
Yeah, we're recording in Kenya, where people were so over-religious that they went into this church and they were made to do things, including going to live in a forest and things like that, and being killed. By the time it was discovered, very many had died. Why? Because of, in my view, because of not challenging their thinking and not challenging what they were being told, So it's important for everybody to be responsible for what they think, what they do, and how they feel. Yeah.
Both of you, with what you're saying, I'm thinking about that scripture. I can't quote it, but I think it's King Solomon, where he's saying, get wisdom, get understanding. Mm-hmm. You hearing something, but you educating yourself. And the more that you educated yourself, then the more you understood what it was, then the more you could do what? Advocate for yourself. And I'm hearing you, Marion, saying, when we're hearing things, challenge them, study to show thyself approved, study so that you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to shift it here, because as much as we're talking about it, let's talk about help. Let's talk about resiliency of this, because I don't want to leave people where, okay, good luck. You heard about it. Now let's go. How do people start to seek help? I guess if we could briefly, maybe first is, a lot of what you've said is these things start during puberty. Mm-hmm. But guess what? I'm sure people just reaching puberty are not the ones listening and watching this show. Mm-hmm. There are people who've been on the earth for a few decades. Mm-hmm. But let's say if nothing was addressed back when they felt something was maybe slightly different. Mm-hmm. So how can you help people, or how can people help themselves to identify maybe they need some more support? And then we'll quickly shift into where they can get the support. So first, Marion, how can they even understand that maybe it's time for them to get some support?
Number one, first of all, let me say that mental health or mental illness starts very early, even when people are children. But usually it is diagnosed at around adolescence is when it's diagnosed, although even now it's being diagnosed earlier. That's the first thing. So how does one know when to go for help? When there's a change in the mood, when there's a change in behavior, when there's a change in feelings, For example, when there's a change even in school performance.
Marion, I actually want to stop you there really quick. The reason why is, what about someone, I'm hearing you say a change, but what if someone's like 40 and they've been behaving and experiencing this thing for, let's say, at least for 3 decades? So it's not a change. How do they know that they need the help? Do you know what I mean?
Well, they need to know their symptoms. That's again about awareness. What are these symptoms? Am I sleeping well? Am I eating well, or have I suddenly lost too much weight, recently, or added so much weight? Have I lost interest in what I used to like to do? Am I able to concentrate, whether in school or in business or things like that? Do I feel like going to work even? Or am I isolating? Have I considered suicide? Things like that. And how are my social relationships? Is there a problem? Am I able to sit and converse with people without having too many conflicts, with others? So if one can gauge how they are doing in terms of their social life and their wellness, their thoughts, then it's possible to say, hey, I think something is wrong. Somebody may have pointed out, for example, hey, by the way, these days, the way you are this, family members can notice a few things and point out. But the question is, when that is pointed out, do you as a person take responsibility and say, okay, I need to seek help? Yeah, so those are some of the things people can look out for and to know that it's time to get help. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Gee, what would you say to that? Because you did your own advocacy.
Yeah, again, it takes a lot to study yourself, be self-aware. There are always patterns. And the people around you try to build very solid relationships because they are, aside from you being aware of, what you're going through, they're the first people who will actually point out when there's something that's, out of the norm. You're looking more active, you're more talkative. Like for me, I'm highly introverted. For instance, when we met the first time, you over call, you were worried that I actually don't talk. But I do talk. Okay? I'm generally a happy person, but you'll rarely see expressions like me laughing very often or smiling. It's very rare.
Yes.
So one of the things like my mom used to notice when I'm in my room with my brother and I'm laughing out loud, he'll ask my brother on the side, is he okay? Or she even had contacts of my friends in school like, hey, he didn't take breakfast today. Can you make sure that he's eaten something? Or he's been a bit off. Can you please just check up on him, on me, and just give me some feedback? So, those kind of things. And having come to the knowledge that, okay, this is what I have, maybe you've been diagnosed, then now create measures to make sure that you're coping well. And you see, coping mechanisms is, there's no one size fits all. People cope differently. And it's, for some like me, how I coped when I was a teenager and I was in college is not the same way I'm coping now.
Right.
So life is ever changing. And again, coping mechanisms also have to always change along the way.
Okay. And that actually leads me to the final piece of where can people get help? So, Marion, where can they get help? And then, when I come to you, you could talk about also some of the things that you're doing to help support. Where can people get help? They're hearing this today. They're watching this. It's resonating with someone. Where do they go from here?
Okay. Most hospitals have counselors. Even here in Kenya, government hospitals all over the country, private hospitals, you will most likely find a therapist. Online also, therapists are posting the information out there. There is a lot of help. Some churches are providing counseling. For example, I can think of Nairobi Chapel here in Kenya, CITAM churches, they have counselors, and other churches, even All Saints Cathedral, and there must be others. There's also a place called Amani Counseling Center here in Kenya, people can go for help or call them, and they have centers all over the country. And then the Kenya Red Cross also have a helpline. It's 1199, and people can seek help from Kenya Red Cross. It's 24/7, and making that call is free of charge. And then where children are concerned, there are issues, 116. It's a childline helpline. Again, it's free of charge, and you just state what's happening, and they can be able to get child therapists and all the help that one needs. Yes.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. I hope everyone's making note of those. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And G, I come to you about you are a champion. You are working through this. You are living through this. Please tell us how you're helping people to live, work, and cope. And even if you know some other resources that people can go from here, use from here.
Yeah, I think right now for the pandemic was a very great tragic event in the history of humankind. But it was also a blessing because it actually brought particularly to the mental health space, it brought the conversation was actually brought to life because people could freely now talk about mental health because a lot of people were experiencing it. So we have a lot of resources online, as she's mentioned, but also aside from seeking like professional help, we have actually support groups. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's one thing to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, but then after that, it's a journey that you're working alone. So what do? You have to find a community of people who are going through the same thing you're going through. So we have support groups. Like one of the support groups that really helped me throughout college was one that's called Users and Survivors of Psychiatry Kenya, USPK. So they meet every month. These are a support group for people who are living with mental health illnesses and also caregivers, because also caregivers need support. So there's that. In terms of what am I doing, as I said, I run Strokes and Pros, which is actually a faith-based platform that, again, focuses on using the arts to create awareness on mental health issues.
I encourage everyone to read that blog. It is amazing. Yeah,
provides psychosocial support to the youth living with mental illness and mentoring and upcoming artists. The awareness is through the blog where I share my real-life story with real-life people, the impact they've had in my journey with bipolar, and the goodness of God in that journey. I also get to do awareness through interviews, both TV and radio, also podcasts. The other thing I do also advocate for and champion for alternative healthy coping mechanisms alongside medication. So while I take medication, there are other things that I do that actually help me cope. For instance, when I came in, you saw me with a tape measure. So I am an interior designer, a visual artist, and a certified carpenter. So I do work with wood. And as a certified carpenter, I have an extension of my business where I facilitate experiential woodwork sessions, where I teach basic woodwork skills on actual projects and also facilitate art sessions. And what this does, it just gives people alternative ways of, decompressing and dealing with stress. And that's what I've been able to do, I think, for the past 3 years actively.
Excellent. So today we have been talking about breaking the silence. Mental health matters. We've discussed so many parts of this, but finally also seeing how you can get support and where you can go from here. One thing I've learned is that mental health is our responsibility. It's the first time I ever heard it like that it's no one else's responsibility but our own. I've also heard today that our own self-awareness, we need to know ourselves in order to move from there and get the support and help that we need. And also, we are seeing that there is hope in the Christian community and in the church, because churches are now acknowledging and seeing that they need to be a part of the solution. Remember, we want to hear what it is that you have to say about our conversation. I thank our guests for being here today. This is Rise and Shine. I am Vuyanzi. Thank you so much for being with us. See you again soon.